Do you have a successful maintenance program at your port or terminal? It's kind of a loaded question, wouldn't you agree? It actually leads to another question. How do you define success? Is there a single metric, just one number, that you could point to that would say that you're being successful? Likely, you'd agree that the answer is no. There are many factors to determine whether you're truly efficient and effective with your maintenance program. While there are many factors that must be addressed, it is important that we make our programs successful, at ports and terminals especially. And there's two very important reasons why. Number one is the growth of this particular industry. Did you know that according to a recent report, that the valuation of the ports and terminals markets indicates that it's going to increase by over 10% in the next 5 years? Imagine, for example, if that directly impacted your capacity and the throughput that you were expected to handle, a 10% increase. Yes, if you weren't successful beforehand, you're certainly going to be facing additional challenges now. But beyond that, we take into account the context. Ports and terminals represent a very critical element of the global economic infrastructure. One report indicates that more than 80% of global merchandise by volume is transported via sea routes. So, as a critical element, it is also important that maintenance programs be and remain successful. However, there are challenges to this. As with any maintenance industry, in order to achieve success, you have to overcome those challenges. And ports and terminals are no different. Consider some that ports and terminals are faced with. One has to do with the operational schedule. For some ports, they're a 24/7, 365 operation. There is no downtime. So what does that mean? Well, communication sometimes becomes a challenge. Obviously, we're talking about communication not just between shifts, but even interdepartmental communication. For example, since we're talking about maintenance, think about the communication between maintenance and operations. The maintenance needs to be able to communicate to operations the readiness of critical equipment for operation. But maintenance has challenges related to perhaps the certification process of certain critical assets. They need to know where the certification is at, what status it is, what's required to achieve that certification, when it's coming due, in order to make sure the port remains operational. And in addition to that, we're dealing with equipment that just by their very nature, they introduce challenges. Sometimes we're dealing with cranes. Now we're talking about work at heights. We're talking about challenging inspections, whether it's hoist ropes and chains. Accessing difficult areas and systems is commonplace for ports and terminals. Another challenge may be the inability to forecast maintenance. Maybe it's the port operational schedule that really impacts that. For example, it may be extremely full, and so getting that time available to do the maintenance and being prepared when that time does arrive can be a challenge. It may be also that the schedule is extremely flexible, so what you were preparing for is no longer available. So how do you mitigate that? How do you manage that? How do you improve your maintenance program in that particular way? Beyond that, we also have to think about the challenge of future growth that we've already discussed. If and when these ports continue to grow, are we prepared to respond to that growth? Is our maintenance team aware of what it will need, how to allocate the budget that is for that growth, where to invest in its maintenance program? These are all important questions, but they're all related to improving the effectiveness and the efficiency of our maintenance program. How do we do that? Well, today we're going to discuss an important element that will lead us to the ability of making our maintenance program much more effective. And that is digital transformation. And we're going to look at digital transformation of port and terminal operations and maintenance through the lens of the CMMS and maintenance data. So let's start with that point. What is digital transformation? That might not be terminology that we frequently use in our everyday conversation. So digital transformation in its basic form is the integration of digital technology into business operations. That essentially means identifying how to use technologies to improve existing activities and streamline processes. For maintenance organizations, that often means, as a first step in digital transformation, that a computerized maintenance management system is implemented. It makes a lot of sense. CMMS immediately addresses and turns into a digital information, a digital process in place of a manual process. Examples include the generation of PMs, for example. So not only documenting the PMs into digital data, but then taking that data and transforming it into work orders. Perhaps integrating workflow processes if they're required for approval of different types of documents. Taking a digital approach when it comes to not just tracking inventory, but issuing it, for example, to various work packages. There's a lot of processes that the CMMS immediately addresses, and for some could be considered the foundation of all digital transformation for maintenance programs. But while it begins with CMMS, digital transformation does not need to stop with CMMS. We can grow beyond that. Some examples for areas of continued growth in digital transformation include mobile solutions. Now let's think about that in the context of ports and terminals. A mobile solution gives us the ability to communicate with our technicians quicker. So when corrective maintenance is identified, then the response and execution time is reduced as that information is transmitted and then accurately represented to the technician to act upon. Another example would be more accurate corrective maintenance identification by the technician. With a mobile device in hand, we're now readily able to take pictures, record audio, make video, which will allow us to properly diagnose the problem and address it when recording our maintenance activities or recording the need for maintenance. Beyond that, mobility also gives us access to additional features of mobile platforms. For example, interaction with RFID tags for equipment identification, part identification, equipment location information. All of these are vital when executing maintenance tasks. Another form of digital transformation would be sensor data. Many modern pieces of equipment naturally incorporate this as part of its functionality, the ability to essentially transfer its data, whether that's operational data or failure data, to an environment that the CMMS can consume and then create actionable tasks for various maintenance groups. In addition to that, by collection of that data, we can then trend it, being able to go into more of a predictive mode. By looking at past historical readings, we're able to anticipate the type of maintenance activities, perhaps even refine our maintenance program. Beyond that, we have storeroom automation, the ability to use RFID tags to issue automatically by means of a portal to work orders or badges to really track and further refine our consumption of materials. Now, these all might sound good. These might be things that we're excited about or interested in, and that's great because that shows that we're interested in growth. But we should not neglect the fact that the foundation of all of this digital transformation for a maintenance program is the computerized maintenance management system, the CMMS. And the reason is because it collects so much maintenance data. Now, why are we putting an emphasis on data? Wouldn't you agree that when it comes to any form of measurement, I mean, this is a universal principle, that to do it accurately, you need reliable data. The same applies to being able to accurately measure the success of a maintenance program. It starts with reliable data. And a CMMS is that data collection point for maintenance programs. The data that it collects obviously includes maintenance activities that we're performing, creating fundamentally a work history for various pieces of equipment, both preventive maintenance as well as corrective maintenance. In so doing, we track equipment performance. We know how it's operating, and we also track failure conditions that created the corrective maintenance needs. We also track the utilization of resources through the CMMS, whether that's labor in the form of crews, shifts, and trades and their usage, or it's inventory, and it's the consumption of that inventory. What types of parts are being consumed and how often? Now, once that data is reliably captured in a CMMS, now we're able to transform the data into actions. And those actions improve the effectiveness and the efficiency of our program. Let's talk about 3 particular ways in which it does that. First of all, identifying inefficiencies. Some examples include evaluation of our PM program. Right now, if we were asked, can we calculate the costs between our PMs versus our corrective maintenance? Do we have confidence in our ability to do that? With the CMMS, it becomes much easier because we've accumulated those costs over time. So now we can start to evaluate the benefit ratio of our PM program and consider different failure modes that might allow us to be more efficient, more effective with our maintenance dollars. In addition to that, we can evaluate our PM performance and our adherence to a PM program. Which crews are being successful? We can ask more insightful questions. Why are those crews successful? Beyond that, now we're achieving what could be considered PM optimization. We're really evaluating that program and we're fine-tuning it because we have the data to do so. The same could be said with the consumption of inventory. We can pinpoint, again, inefficiencies in that consumption by tracking the parts that are consumed by various items, various pieces of equipment, and as part of our maintenance activities. Are we purchasing the items in the correct quantity? Are we managing the levels of our inventory correctly? Not creating too much demand and not running out of material? Are we able to correctly forecast the lead time of various items so that when the work needs to be done, the materials are ready? Are we consuming the wrong parts on the equipment? These are great questions, but a CMMS data will help us look at those areas and find the inefficiency and resolve it. Another way that CMMS helps us improve our program is through optimizing a maintenance schedule. Again, with the collection of failure history, we're able to trend that data. That helps us to anticipate the workload, modify our PMs, and essentially make that schedule fit our needs. That helps us to schedule trades and crews effectively based on anticipated workload and get more into a predictive mode. And we'll talk more about that here in a minute. But in addition to that, we can effectively plan for lead time of materials and equipment availability. Another goal that we can achieve is the reduction of downtime. As we're consuming data from failure modes and from corrective maintenance and our preventive maintenance program, hopefully we've expanded our digital transformation to include sensor-related data. Now our program starts to become more predictive. We're looking at reducing that operational downtime to keep the port up and running. And that comes from the foundation of our maintenance data. We can identify and evaluate different failure modes and look at its impact and forecast that impact because we have collected that maintenance data through the CMMS. So we see the CMMS as a good foundation, a good stepping stone, a point of progress that is essential for the continued improvement towards success of our port and terminals maintenance program. That really is through the data collection facilitated by the CMMS. It represents a cornerstone for continuous improvement and, in the end, long-term success in asset management and maintenance operations. So now is the time to make digital transformation a priority. Growth is not going to wait, and the challenges that growth brings with it are going to continue. So that requires on our part continued change of our maintenance and operations. If we stay where we are, we really will be left behind by that growth. So digital transformation is the path to take, and we start with that CMMS. That's not where it ends, however. Don't forget that there are areas of growth when it comes to mobile solutions, sensor data integration, as well as the opportunity for other forms of automation, like for inventory and storeroom. So in order to be successful, it's true, there is no one metric. There is no one number that we can point to that indicates that we're successful. But we can continue to make progress towards success by making digital transformation a priority with CMMS, which, as we stated, will improve our communication, pinpoint inefficiency, and optimize schedules, thereby reducing our downtime. And that will help us to successfully navigate our way to an efficient CMMS and maintenance program for our port and terminal.